Houston, we may have a problem. Welcome everybody to another discussion video here on the channel, and today we are going to be talking about the elephant in the room, or I guess the sword in the room. It's a cutter. I don't really know what it's supposed to be cutting. I'm guessing paper. Anyways, I'm off topic here. We are going to be discussing the standard format, the health of the standard format, specifically with regards to Is It Prowess, and even more specifically than that, Cori-Steel Cutter. This card is absolutely everywhere in the format right now. It has been taken just absolutely dominant metagame share in the past couple of regional championships. Maybe not the highest win rate, and we'll get into that in a second. But in any case, it's kind of a weird format right now. We'll just say that. And we're going to be talking about all of that stuff. And finally, at the end, I'm going to give you my thoughts on what I think should happen. And yeah, let's just get right into it. We're going to start off with the metagames from the Japan Regional Championship. And here is that metagame from the Japan Regional Championship. Is It Prowess, 33.8%. For context, these events took place 2 weeks prior to Hartford. We have Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and Minneapolis. All those three were 2 weeks before Hartford, and then Hartford itself was only a few days prior. So Prowess, 33.8% of the metagame, Oculus, 12.3%, Gruul, 5.8%, Mono Red, 5%, and then you kind of go down the list from there, but 33.8% of the metagame. That number's pretty high. When you're expected to play against a certain deck like a third of all of your rounds, it's certainly up there. So then for Australia and New Zealand, this was 26.6% Prowess. Albeit a much smaller field. As you can see, the total deck count is much, much lower than that of Japan, and then pales in comparison to Minneapolis and Hartford, but still 26.6. That number is significantly lower than it was in Japan, but Minneapolis, well, actually, hold on. We'll just take a look at the rest of this real quick. 10.4% Oculus, 8.1 Jeskai Control, 7.2 Dimir Mid, and then it goes on from there. So Minneapolis, which again was the same weekend of these two, Minneapolis was zoomed in a little too much, 32.8% of the metagame, Oculus 12.4, Xur Overlord 7.1, Omniscience 6.3, and then so on and so forth. So very, very similar numbers to Japan, right? Maybe a little bit lower. Now, again, these events all took place 2 weeks prior to SCGCon Hartford. Now, you would imagine that if you had 2 weeks to prepare, knowing that Prowess is the best deck going in, you would try anything and everything that you possibly could to try and see if you could beat the Is It Prowess deck, which in turn, theoretically, would mean that perhaps the metagame share is a little bit lower, right? Just kidding. It's higher. 36.3% of the people in Hartford decided to bring Prowess, which is up a little bit from 2 weeks prior. And that, I think, honestly, that is the craziest thing to me. That people had 2 weeks to prepare for Prowess. At least speaking on behalf of myself and all the people that were in our testing Discord, we tried everything. Every single one of these decks, Omniscience, Oculus, Jeskai Control, Domain, Mono Red, Dimir. We didn't try the black decks as much. I played like hundreds of games of Orzhov Pixie, and then we had somebody doing Esper Pixie too. We tried basically every single one of these decks, and we just couldn't really find something that was consistently beating Prowess. There is a little bit of a caveat there with the Mono Red camp, because I don't want to spoil it, we'll get to it in a second, but the list that won went to some extreme lengths to fix the Prowess matchup, and they certainly did that. They did a good job of that. So this is the metagame breakdown, metagame percentages. Now, what I want to show you next is I want to look at the conversion rates. Now, for folks at home who are maybe not familiar with the structure of the regional championships, at least the ones that take place in the United States, those ones are 9-round Swiss on day one. You have to win 6 of those 9 rounds in order to advance to the day 2 competition. So that means that the conversion rate is the percentage of the prowess players that converted into a day 2 performance. If you look here, 27.5% of the prowess players converted into day 2. That number is not ridiculously high. I mean, I would say for a deck that is 36% of the room, maybe you would expect that number to be a little bit lower, but less than a third of the players converting, that's nothing too crazy. But what stands out to me here is, again, you would think that if prowess is clearly the best deck in the format, and everybody knew that for the past 2 weeks, you would imagine that maybe people would have some good plans against it. And it actually increased from 36% of the metagame on day 1 to 40% of the metagame on day 2, which means that even though only a third of the prowess players converted, this is the percentage of the day 2 metagame, which means that everybody else lost the prowess, even though 27.5% of the prowess players converted. So the metagame share increased on day 2 to 40%. And then if we take a look at Minneapolis, roughly about the same. The Minneapolis metagame share was about 33%. The day 2 metagame for Minneapolis was 37.6%, with a pretty measly conversion rate of 15.2. So I guess comparatively, if you're looking at these numbers, that 27.5% conversion rate looking pretty good right about now. So that is the conversion rates. Now, with all of this data, you might ask yourself, well, where are the win rates? How much did prowess win in these events? Well, I got those for you. So first up, we're going to take a look at Hartford. So the total overall win rate of the entire event for Is It Prowess was 52.25%. Now, you might say to yourself, that doesn't sound very high, which I'll be honest with you, it isn't. But comparatively, when you're looking at everybody else, Omniscience 49, Oculus 47, Jeskai 44, Domain 46, Mono Black 42, Orzhov Demons just barely above a coin flip, it actually had, I believe, the 4th highest win rate among all of these top tier decks. The only decks that had higher win rates were Orzhov Pixie, a deck designed to beat prowess, which it did. Let's go to Mono Red Aggro, again, a deck, well, not initially designed to beat prowess, but the new lists from Hartford, and we'll get to that in a second, are designed to beat prowess, 58.4. And the funniest thing to me, the deck with the highest win rate of the entire event, Dimir Midrange at 55.83% win rate, still only won 40% of its matches against prowess. And that's the people who played Dimir midrange. They didn't play Dimir knowing it had a good prowess matchup, because they assume, I would hope they all correctly assumed that the prowess matchup was bad, and they knew that because Dimir just doesn't have a way to get Cutter off the battlefield. The upside of playing Dimir is that you beat basically everybody else, right? 75 against Omni, 71 against Jeskai, 75 against Domain, 87 against Mono Black. So Dimir is very good against everything else. The problem is when you run into a situation where, for example, I played 9 rounds in Hartford, I played 6 mirrors. One of my friends played all 15 rounds of the tournament, and they played 11 prowess mirrors. So when you're running into a matchup spread like that, you're not going to convert towards the top of the tournament because you're just getting this too many times. And that's the problem. But that is the Hartford win rates. The other chart that I have for you is from every other regional championship. This data was taken before Hartford, so it's basically everything else that's not Hartford. EU, Japan, Southeast Asia, and this one might not have Australia on it. I'm not positive. But in any case, prowess, roughly the same. 52.46% win rate, which, again, doesn't sound that high. But when you're comparing it to the rest of the metagame, which, small caveat here, I don't know if anybody else feels this way, but Standard just kind of feels like a coin flip format, which is why you see these win rates so close to each other. 50%, 49%, 51%, 49%. So even though 52.46 is not a high win rate, it is still what I think the 3rd highest. 53 is higher, and wait, is it the 2nd highest? Yeah, second highest win rate among this chart. Once again, the only deck with a higher win rate is the deck that can't beat prowess. So when you look at these numbers, for people who their argument is, oh, well, it only won 52% of its matches. You need to read through the lines a little bit and look at the rest of the data to understand that, yes, it only won 52% of its matches, but comparatively, that number is pretty high because everybody else is just a coin flip. So the point that I'm making here through all of this is that going back to the Hartford data, right? Everybody in the entire event in Hartford knew that going into the tournament, prowess was clearly the best deck in the format. It was tier 0. This is the litmus test of the format. You need to be able to have a good plan against it. Even though people knew this going in, it still won more than half of its matches, and it was 36% of the room. Usually with a deck that has a representation that high, the win rate would kind of flatten out a little bit, maybe go below a coin flip, get closer to like 47, 48%. But no, it still remained at the same 52% win rate. Again, that number is not within like Hogak, Oko, Nadu, whatever range, but just the sheer fact that it won more than half of its matches is still impressive to me. Now, the next thing that I want to point you towards is this Reddit post. So there was live commentary and coverage of the entire event in Hartford. I didn't get a chance to watch any of it because I was participating in day 1, and then day 2, I was there playing some side events. So I wasn't really watching any coverage. But there was a situation where Corey, Baumeister, and Jim Davis were in the commentary booth, and Jim made a comment something along the lines of Magic players need to stop being lazy. And this is in regards to people calling for bans and all of this stuff. And I love Jim. Jim's a great guy. I've known him for a little bit. And I don't necessarily entirely disagree with this statement. I do think that on average, players do tend to maybe call for the ban hammer a little bit more frequently than they should. But the notion that like the people in this event were being lazy, I just don't know that I buy that. And the reason for that, I would like to point you to the list that won the entire tournament, Mono Red Aggro, in the hands of Charmander, aka Percy Fang. I want you to take a look at this deck list. Just look at the main deck, look at the sideboard, and tell me if you notice anything off. He played Magebane Lizard in the main deck. That is the equivalent of taking your Boros Energy deck in Modern and playing Stony Silence in the main deck because you don't want to lose to Affinity. It is just absurd, where you would realistically never consider main decking this card if it wasn't for Izzet Prowess and Cori-Steel Cutter. And the point that I'm making here is that saying that people are being lazy when the winner of the event main decked a sideboard card just so he could be pre-boarded against Prowess, I don't think that's lazy. A lot of the Prowess players had 4 Drake Catchers in their main deck, and they played less Slick Shots. Some didn't even play Swift Spear. They were making their deck to be better in the mirror match game 1. The winner of Minneapolis, Jeskai Control, hit from the hands of Casey Miller, 4 Temporary Lockdown. Now, granted, you could make an argument that Temporary Lockdown would be a good card anyways, even if it weren't for the presence of Prowess. But certainly, if there's Izzet Prowess and Cori-Steel Cutter in the metagame, you're going to want 4 of these in your main deck. But that's the point that I'm making. People aren't lazy. They're trying to beat the deck. Some people are successful, right? The 2 winners of Minneapolis and Hartford, they built their decks to beat Prowess, and they beat Prowess. The issue, and I think that the conclusion that I want to end this video on, is that I don't think that people should have to go through these types of lengths just to get to even against Prowess, right? Prowess, for all of the RCs and Hartford and every single championship this far, still is winning more than half of its matches. Even though people are main decking Magebane Lizard and Temporary Lockdown and High Noon and all of these cards that you would basically never consider main decking, and it's still winning more than half of its matches. Think about that for a second. This is with people gunning for it. So the notion of Magic players being lazy and not trying to beat prowess, look, again, I love Jim. I just don't agree with that statement. So at the end of the day, if we are at a point where the only way to win is to main deck cards that are only good against one, maybe two decks. To be fair, Magebane is good against Omniscience too. It's good against Omniscience and Prowess. That's basically it, but it is good against both of those decks. But, you know, at the end of the day, do we really want to live in a world where we need, in order to compete in the format, like every single deck just has to main deck one of their sideboard cards just to get to even against Prowess? I don't think so. That's my stance on it. So I really do think that you would be able to open up the format a little bit more in terms of deck diversity. Players wouldn't be forced to main deck these cards that they don't otherwise want to main deck. And personally, again, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments, but I do believe that the standard format would be better off without Cori-Steel Cutter. The other kind of weird thing here is the next Pro Tour is happening June 22nd. That's Pro Tour Final Fantasy. The next ban announcement is not until June 30th. So I'm a little afraid, and I highly doubt they're going to do any sort of emergency banning, but I'm a little afraid that for the Pro Tour Final Fantasy is actually not going to contain a lot of Final Fantasy cards. Just saying, I want to be optimistic, but it's tough when you look at these numbers and you look at what's winning and you use all of that data and you kind of come to a conclusion. So again, at the end of the day, I do believe that Cori-Steel Cutter should be removed from the format. And yeah, again, I would love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comment section down below. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, you're a trooper. Like, subscribe, comment. We are getting very, very close to 20K subs. So if you're not subscribed to the channel already, hit that sub button. Let me know in the comment section down below what you thought of the video. And until next time, adios.